Hello there, I'm Steve Matchett, mostly retired. Join me, won't you? Today I want to share with you a little carpentry project that absolutely came out of nowhere. Home for Suzuka wine chicken. Well, this wonderful little ceramic wine pitcher I traded a Benetton t-shirt for with the owner of a restaurant right in the middle of Suzuka, Japan. It was effectively a recreation of an Italian pizzeria. And you can see the Japanese influence of the rather naive art painted on the outside of this little wine pitcher. Well, what happened earlier in that day, my good friends and colleagues from Benetton and I, during one of our coffee breaks, had been talking with the engineers and mechanics from Scuderia Ferrari, and they had told us about this pizzeria, and so we went in search of it. And I have to say, it turned into one of the most memorable, fun social events of my entire Benetton career. And the Ferrari mechanics said they'd never tasted such wonderful thin crust pizza anywhere outside of Italy. Well, I was thrilled to take that home as a little souvenir, but I've never really known what to do with it. That was back in the 1990s. So now fast forward 30 plus years to my life here in the United States. I had just finished some renovation work to my boathouse down here on Lake Wylie, and I'd built a work surface at one end of the boathouse, and I had these odd pieces of framing timber left over. Well, I'm always loath to throw things away, so I wondered whether or not I could use them to build, I didn't really know, kind of a bar stool if I was sitting down there, or a engine rebuild stand, or a saw table. I didn't really know, but I started to assemble the pieces together and see what came of it all. Well, I haven't really got a flat work surface to be able to build anything here. Actually, since moving to the States, I have very few tools. I buy them as I need them. So the flattest surface I've got is the table saw itself. So I often use that as my flat patch when I'm trying to build things together to keep things true. One side led to another side, and then I put the bracing in, and the thing began to take shape. But at this point, I became rather attached to this thing, whatever it was going to be, and I thought, well, it's probably too big to be a bar stool, and maybe I shouldn't leave it down in the boathouse, but I could build some sort of table from it. Excuse my coffee cup there in this shot, but from another project, I had some pieces of oak left over, off-cut pieces that have been lying around for a while. And so again, using my saw table as a flat patch, I kind of selectively fitted these pieces together. I cut out some of the damaged ends and trimmed them as much as I could. And I was absolutely thrilled when I realized I would have just enough pieces to lay out the top of the table, so I would be able to make an oak top to it. Now, a lot of these oak pieces had started to cup slightly. I mean, even good quality hardwood over a while, when it's that thin, will start to warp and cup. And so it was a challenge to get them to sit squarely on top of the table, but with some good quality wood glue and using offcuts of wood and cramps, I managed to apply quite a lot of pressure to those pieces of wood and then made sure they thoroughly dried before moving on to the next one. So it's rather a slow process of building each piece one after the other, but delighted to end up with a solid oak top onto what I now believe would be a display table. And I have a house plan that's been with me for about 15 years. I thought, well, that'll be the place for that. And I'll show you Planto later on. So having got to this stage, I thought, well, let's put some paint onto this creation and see what it turns out like. So I chose a deep indigo blue, which is a color that Benetton used along with their four primary colors of red, yellow, green, blue. And then using just some sandpaper, I distressed it and took some of the paint back off, which I always like to do that with furniture because I think distressing the paint adds a lot more character. And there we see the solid oak top now sanded down, which I was rather pleased, actually turned out very well, along with the indigo blue frame. But there were no edging pieces, no trim pieces around that. and I didn't really have any trim pieces to put around the table. And so, again, using just some scrap pieces and the table saw, I managed to cut enough, just 1/8 of an inch thick pieces to make the trimming. Mitered them into place, and then just had enough to lay it out, and there we are. So now we see the solid oak top with the pine trim around it, the edging trim, and then the blue frame. So talk about a project that had a life of its own. This is absolutely an example of that, because I never set out for that to be the case with this. But then I wasn't finished. Now I had the idea that I could create a sort of cupboard storage display area underneath that table if I enclosed 3 sides of it and just left one side exposed. And so just with some off-cut pieces of paneling, I made 3 panels, the right size, to enclose 3 sides of the box. And just with some rattle can enamel paint, I put a layer of red on those 3 pieces and let that thoroughly set and cure and dry. Then I did the same. So these are the same 3 panels you've just seen being painted red. And then I laid down a coat of yellow on top of that. And then did the same thing again, all just with rattle cans. But basically these are the primary colours that I'm putting on here. Something that Benetton used to use a lot on their race cars and on their marketing. The United Colours of Benetton was their logo. And so they used the 4 primary colours quite a lot, both on the cars and in their marketing. So here is the final coat, this time green. So we've got the 4 primary colours of red, yellow, green and blue all painted onto these 3 panels. And then I let them thoroughly dry out in the sun, about for a couple of days. Then took some wet and dry paper, sandpaper, and just using some water, and very carefully I went back through those layers, rubbing down one layer after the other. Rubbed through the green to expose the blue, through the blue to expose the yellow, and then through the yellow just to give a hint of the red. You can see in this throwback photograph here with me standing alongside one of the race trucks from Benetton, exactly what I'm talking about, that rich deep blue along with the primary colours. And again, I had just enough offcuts of oak to be able to make a frame to hold in those panels. I mean, literally just enough. I think I had to get down to around 12 mil wide is the maximum I could go to, but I used every square inch of oak to be able to make that framework for those panels. And there, forgive the darkness of this shot, but there is the finished piece of furniture, which was never, ever intended to be that. There's the plant I talked about earlier on. I think I got him or her from Home Depot for about $1. And it was absolutely right on the edge of giving up. I mean, the soil was bone dry. But I paid $1, brought Planto back home, repotted it and watered it, and it's been a good loyal friend for about, I don't know, pushing on for towards 15 years, I think. So having done all that, I thought, well, the next thing to do really would be to put some little lights on the inside. And so I got some little party lights or fairy lights. I think I got them from Amazon, and trying to create a kind of a night light effect. So I'm always a fan of very dim lighting in a house. I'd much rather it would be that way, dark lighting than bright. And I like to see little night lights around the house. And so finally, having done all that and put the lights in, I have a home for Suzuka wine chicken. And again, it absolutely came out of nowhere. So I love this little thing. I love the display cabinet, and I like the throwback to the Benetton colours on it. That reminds me of my years with Benetton, which were very, very significant years in my life, as you know. And that little Suzuka wine pitcher sits there and reminds me of that wonderful evening. All the best memories come out of nowhere, don't they? Good friends, loyalty and kindness. That's all that matters. Take care.